Tactical Production Studio. Welcome to Tactical Tuesday, streaming live on YouTube and simulcasting as always on GunChannels.com. To check out our entire lineup of videos, podcasts, and live shows, please visit our website, www.tacticalproductions.com.
What's going on, my Ghost Squad? Welcome to Tactical Tuesday. Today is Tuesday, February 19th, 2019. I am your host, Trey Miller with Ghost Tactical. So we are going to have a fun discussion tonight, to say that. We are live, as always, on YouTube and simulcasting, as always, over on GunChannels.com. If you're not familiar with, Jesus said he'll be right here. If you're not familiar with GunChannels.com, then I really can't help you at this point. Crawl out from under the rock in which you live. No, just kidding. Go check out GunChannels. It was a Pro 2A pro gun community started by G-Webs about 5 years ago. And it's a great place to everyone to kind of gather and to talk amongst ourselves, a friendly face. If you have questions, there's always someone there. There's a 24-hour live lobby chat that someone's usually on that you can ask any question you want or just kind of hang out with fellow like-minded people. So we're going to discuss tonight something that I have been, let's just say that I've been a little upset about, and I think a lot of us have been over a long time, but especially recently in the last couple of years, about not only the gun community itself unifying, but our actual organizations that we entrust to speak for us at a federal level. Now, we're not going to discuss local levels. We might discuss them, but we're more talking about on the national level, the federal law stage, the organizations that we all entrust with our money and our voice to help speak for us to the politicians and all of that. So it's going to be a fun discussion. To all of my mods out there, please allow a lively discussion. I don't want anyone to get censored unless it goes over a line, and I trust you guys to know where that line is. I want people to speak freely, and I want some really good conversation to happen, but if it starts getting personal or demeaning, then take care of what you got to take care of. That being said, we want to ask everybody to help get this message out, to share this with your other people that you hang out with. Make sure you hit those thumbs up, and we're going to get going. We're going to say hello to everyone out there on the Gun Channel side. As of right now, you've got Sean and G's out there. On the YouTube side, we're going to do a quick roll call. And I say roll call. We're going to do a quick roll call. I keep getting roll call in my head. I don't want him in my head. He's a weird dude to have in your head. But we're going to do a quick roll call and say hey to everybody. Patriot in the Dark out there. He said, hey, Ghost, remember me? I do. You got Buck out there, gun-loving Grandpa Stanley. Kingpin's out there. Ozzy Osbourne, the metal god himself. Rich White, the 1%. Warsaw Patriots out there. You got Weston Probes. Hey. You've got Midnight Range TM. What's up, Mohawk Boy? Grim 90, the Tactical Reaper is out there. Gunpowder Beauty. Hello, dear. How are you? Andrew Faulkner, Tardot, Tennessee Patriot, the Gun Snob, Squib Load. Squib, I'm sure, would have some interesting points to make out there, so make sure they're coming. Budget Guns and Gears out there. Andrew Faulkner, Clover Tack, Kevin Wonders, Guitar Man Pete, Calaveras, Raphael's out there. Guys, if I didn't mention you, I apologize. Go ahead and ask any questions you want. Make sure you tag myself or anyone that's on the panel out there. We will try to get those questions answered. If you want to email them, you can at live@ghosttactical.us, or you can text them at 530-364-4678 or 530-36-GHOST. So let's say hello to our esteemed panel real quick. We've got from Dallas, Texas. He's an awesome man. He's an author. He's a 2A activist. He has been on NRA TV. He's been everywhere that you could possibly think of, but he's an awesome human being. And I hope you guys, if you haven't subscribed to him or follow him on all of his social media, please do. You probably know him as the Pew Pew Jew, but we got Yuta Reamer. What's going on, Yuta?
I'm going well. How are you?
Man, I am living the dream. How's everything in Big D?
I'm not going to complain that it's 35 degrees out here.
It's cold and sleeting right now here in Arkansas, so it's fun. Welcome to February, right?
Yeah, exactly.
Awesome. And we got Budget Guns and Gear. What's up, Mike? How you doing, man?
Great. Thanks for the invite. I think this is a topic that really needs to be discussed from more than the one side that it's been discussed at.
I agree. I think that this is going to be a pretty good panel to do that and bring multiple different perspectives. So thanks for coming on, buddy.
Yep.
From Arizona, we got the Godfather himself. What's up, G?
Hey, thanks for the invite.
Hey, thanks for coming on. Sorry I missed your thing earlier today. I just got back in and I couldn't make your show earlier today, but I hope everything went well.
It did. Thanks.
Good. And from Texas, the tactical virus himself. Once again, I told him the wrong day, sent him the wrong link, and even actually email it to a different email address, and yet he still shows up. We got CloverTac. What's up, man?
It's all good, man. Just holding down the fort.
I guess we're stuck with you, man. You just keep showing up, so I guess you're part of it now.
You know how it is.
I know how it is. That's right. Like I said, guys, if you have any questions out there, go ahead and please tag one of us out there, and we will try to get those answered. Got that guy's wife out there. Hello, and Old Red, White, and Blue. I love the name. Old Red, White, and Blue. The NRA has the most members, but I'm tired of them pushing gun control. They won't get a cent from me unless they get right, even though I'm a life member. Then you also have a question from Warsaw Patriots. Says, I'm curious how you would unify the organizations. We are going to discuss some of that. So Tim 18 Wheels is out there. Hope I'm not missing anybody else. If I'm missing you, I apologize, and we'll catch you on the flip side. So what I want to start out real quick is talking about, in my opinion, why we need to kind of unify the organizations is because, once again, we've talked about unifying the culture and the community in past chats and talks, and that's going to be a daunting enough of a task as it is. But the problem that I see is no matter if we're unified or not, the people that we are entrusting with our donations and our financial support and our rights being conveyed to the politicians for us are the major organizations. And there are organizations that we agree with, that we don't agree with, and that's fine. We're all going to have our own personal reasons. But I think that we have an absolute necessity to try to force the organizations to come together as a community together to where they have a unified message. Now, there are times back in the past where during SHOT Show or during different other shows or industry get-togethers, if you want to call them, that some of the major players used to get into a room and talk about a message and solidify one consistent message. And I don't believe those probably happen anymore for whatever reason. But I would like to think that someday those would probably be able to happen again. And if they are happening, at least make them public to where there's a consolidated message. So I want to start bringing in the panel real quick. And I want to kind of go your quick thoughts. 2 questions to each. I'm going to start with CloverTac. 1, how bad is the communication between organizations? And 2, is it savable?
I think it's pretty bad, and yes, I think it's absolutely savable.
Okay. G, what about you? Is it bad as we think it is, and is it savable?
Well, I'm going to play devil's advocate, I think, in this discussion, because I don't know that the organizations, there was ever like a classical time when they all work together. They all come from different reasons and goals, and I don't think I don't know that our gun community's overall goal should be to see them all walking in lockstep. That to me seems like potential for one thing could take them all out. I like the idea that we have different things doing different strategies.
Yeah, and we'll discuss that as well. Yeah, that's not a bad idea, and that's not a bad thought process as well. Budget, what about you?
Yeah, I think that communication between the organizations is pretty abysmal. And sure, it can be salvaged. They just have to start communicating meaningfully between one another. Right now, I think that our gun rights organizations are kind of a macrocosm of, well, maybe a microcosm of the gun community in general is to how fractured we are.
Yeah, and that's a really good point, because I think that it doesn't have to be a big fracture. Any chink in the armor could be used against us by the other side. So let's see, you might bring a different perspective because you've been doing a lot of activist work from a lot of different perspectives. But what do you think? Do you think that the organizations are communicating well right now? And if not, is it savable?
So I don't think that they're communicating well. You have different organizations doing great work, but unfortunately, the biggest organization, being the NRA, doesn't seem like they want to play ball with anybody. And I think until that changes, it's going to be very, very difficult to have everyone work together.
No, I agree with that 100%. And this is where I'm going to be coming from, is I think that all these different organizations, and there's a lot more than what we're going to talk about, but the players that I'm aware of, that I support or have supported, or at least come to mind when we talk about the national level of Second Amendment activism, is the NRA, the Second Amendment Foundation, Gun Owners of America, Firearms Policy Coalition, the Second Amendment Organization. You know, like I said, there are a lot more out there. But the ones that I think that a lot of the people will sit there and say, if they support some, those would be the ones. Those are the ones that I want to kind of start going with. There's a lot of people out there that want to know if you have a YouTube. I want to put your channel out there. Yes, he has a YouTube channel and it's out there. Please go follow him on Instagram as well. The Pew Pew Jew. He's awesome. Yeah, and we're going to talk about one thing real quick and talk about what each does well, possibly. And we all know that the political strong arm, quote unquote, of the Second Amendment is the NRA. It is the biggest. It has the most members, and it probably has the most political clout out there. But I think we all have seen not saying the emergence. I'm not saying it's new, but the emergence of the GOA, the Second Amendment Foundation, the Firearms Policy Coalition, and all of these organizations are also very viable in what they do. And so what we can discuss is maybe what each of them does well and what they can bring to the table. And I do like what G was saying earlier, is maybe not a consolidated message for everything, but if they could consolidate on a message that they could all agree upon, and then they could do their own things outside of that, is that something that we could maybe help get behind? Is at least one message, whether it's, you know, the NFA or whatever, is there something that we could all get together on to where at least it looks like we have a consolidated front to the other side? And I'll throw that question out there to anybody out there that wants to answer that.
I'll say that we've already done it. We did it with M855 recently. We kind of did it with, you know, other things less successfully. But there's been things that were pretty much overwhelmingly all of them got behind. So it's, well, I guess I'm challenging my own position before. It has happened before. They all do get behind, like, sure things.
Well, sure. Yeah. I mean, the sure things are obvious. You know, you have, you have 2013 came across with the AR-15 was under attack. I mean, everyone got underneath that. But as far as maybe consolidating a message of repealing the NFA or anything like that, I think that there's also a lot of balls in the air to where people have their pieces of the apple that they want to go after that maybe some other organizations may not want to touch. Wild Bill out there says we need these multi-billion-dollar gun manufacturers and ammo manufacturers to speak out for us more. We shouldn't even have to help fund the GO or NRA. They should be doing it for us. And honest to God, it's going to sound crazy, but if you honestly think that these manufacturers are not supporting these organizations financially, you're crazy. They may not be out there vocally saying, hey, we donated X amount of dollars, but please don't be naive to think that these manufacturers don't support these organizations financially, at least to some extent.
And I think there's something dangerous about saying, you know, using the phrase somebody doing something for us. part of the pickle that I think we're in now. That whether you're out there listening and you're expecting people that run these channels, the big channels, you know, people complain about, you know, Hickok or Demo or Nothing Fancy or Eric or whoever it might be, and they don't do enough for the Second Amendment, and these people don't. Well, what are you doing? You know, don't expect the NRA to be doing things for you. I mean, yes, they can be a voice. Don't expect the GOA to do everything for you. Yes, they can be a voice and a help. We don't have the power or the money, for example, to bring lawsuits, and they do with the resources at their disposal. But we still need to be out here in the community, grassroots. Tony mentioned this out there in the chat, and doing everything we can do to promote the Second Amendment and the firearm lifestyle as well.
Yep,
you know, I was gonna say, I actually have to agree with whoever said that about the not necessarily the manufacturing companies coming out there in defense of the Second Amendment, because I have no doubts that they're giving tons of money to these gun rights organizations. But you know, I've had my own questions on. Let's take, for example, the bump stock ban. Right now, everyone can agree, I'm sure, that no one really cares that the bump stock was actually banned. They're a gimmick. They're fun to use, but that's all it is. The real issue with the bump stock ban was that it's a modification and you came after a piece of plastic. Yep. That said, my question is, well, look at the competitive shooting world, right? You have these huge names, and these people, their livelihood rely on making modifications to their firearms. Where are they, for example? How come you don't have, you know, the big names in the competitive shooting world saying, no, this is ridiculous. What are you're going to come after the triggers that we now put on our AR-15s to help us shoot faster, more accurate? So I think on one hand, you know, you can't necessarily say where the ammo and gun manufacturers, because they are there. Their goal is not necessarily to be activists, and I can understand that. But I think that there's a whole group of people within the firearms industry that need to start speaking up as ambassadors to the Second Amendment, and not just the five of us sitting here on a YouTube. I mean, that's nice and everything, but you know, we don't have necessarily the same pull and that some of these other big names have.
Yeah, and I think that's a great message to sit there and say, and I think that's a great way of putting it. Is we know that you're financially supporting it, but here's the flip side, just for devil's advocate. Okay, we all know that the gun industry is better when there are Democrats in the office and there is a threat to the Second Amendment, because people are going to buy. We've seen what's happened the last couple of years of people getting complacent because we supposedly had I would say a Republican president that is supposedly pro-gun. I think we could all agree that that may be in the air at this point, but we had at one point we had a Republican president, Republican Congress, Republican Senate, and now we have the Supreme Court that historically would tend to believe that they would at least decide in a more conservative way. But that being said, let me ask you this, Unit.
Yeah.
As we also know that the gun manufacturers will probably not come out publicly because they do enjoy when our rights are being attacked. Is that something that eventually the dollar bill has to be set aside for what's good and what's right? Is that what you're saying? Is put dollars and making money aside? We know that we could use your help publicizing as a Smith & Wesson, as a Glock, as these major manufacturers to come out publicly. Is that what you're saying? Is you wish that they would come out in support, and regardless of the money-making thing?
I mean, yes. I mean,
yeah. That's what I would say. Yeah.
I mean, let's keep in mind what's the Declaration of Independence say?
That's right.
You know, I promise among the signers to mutually pledge to each of our lives, our fortunes. Now, I'm not saying give up your fortunes. I'm not saying, you know, obviously we have to make a living. That's the beauty about America, is that we have the freedom to do what we want. But what happened to that extra mile, not putting the money before freedom? And I think at some point the gun manufacturers and the ammo manufacturers are going to have to say, like, look, I understand that I might be, by me opening my mouth, I will, I might lose out money, but something has to be done and something has to be said. And I really do think that, eventually some of these big companies will have to say something. I mean, look, it can be kind of like the Chick-fil-A syndrome. Every time, the Democrats come after Chick-fil-A, they end up doing better than ever.
Right.
You know what I'm saying? So, I mean, it could be that. I can guarantee you, if you had a company like Smith & Wesson come out and do an entire campaign, pushing gun rights, I can guarantee you that people will go and buy their products 100 times more than they would normally.
Because, yeah, their sales would soar.
Smith & Wesson would have put out the truth, or HK would have put out the truth on their catalog or something. I agree with you 100%. People would see that, and then other companies would see it and go, "Oh, that's something that's valuable to our customers."
I mean, exactly. Especially, I mean, consider this too. I'm very close with the Second Amendment Foundation. Very, very close with Alan Gottlieb, and the whole foundation. Now, consider for a second that they're always looking for funds. They're constantly in need of funds, right? Well, can you imagine if all of a sudden you have, like you said, all these companies who are out there saying, no, we're a multi-billion-dollar industry. We are going to really invest a chunk into the gun rights movement, because if we don't, we're going to be out of business.
Yep.
And I think, like I said, eventually something will have to, something will be done.
And I agree with you 100%. And I've been saying for a long time that I wish that the people that actually have the voices on a big stage would start using them more. And like you said, you're talking about these major manufacturers that we all, like I said, we've all conceded the point that they're giving money to these organizations, but utilize your voice, and it can't be about your bottom line. Without the Second Amendment, there's no need for your company to exist. So there was a statement out there that says Eric Pratt has gone on shows saying he hopes someday gun rights will be safe and the GOA won't be needed. He says he has respect for that, although gun rights will always be under attack. And understand one thing, it's not just the Second Amendment, it's always going to be under attack. There are going to be several things that are always going to be under attack, whether it's Republican or Democrat in the office. There are several issues that are going to be issues for as long as America is around, and the Second Amendment is just one of those issues. But I do tend to agree with this. I want to bring Mike in. Budget, what do you say when you hear Eric Pratt saying that? And a lot of organizations say that they wish there was no need for the GOA, or wish there was no need for the NRA or the Second Amendment Foundation or FPC. What do you think when you hear someone say, "I wish there was, but I don't see that coming"?
I pretty much echo that I don't see that coming. I think that there are always going to be people who would, for one reason or another, want to strip the citizenry of our freedoms, whether it be the Second Amendment, the First Amendment, Fourth Amendment, et cetera, et cetera. It's always going to happen, and there's always going to be a need for organizations to be the watchdog of that. I have to agree that it's awful short-sighted of the big dogs to remain silent on this issue. I'm sure they do financially help behind the scenes, but I think they need to have a little bit more skin in the game, because what we're all fighting for is for them to stay in business. And, they need to support people like the Second Amendment Foundation. On my show, I constantly try to pimp the SAF to everybody, because it's that important. 80% of existing case law that's pro-gun is a direct result of the work of the Second Amendment Foundation. That can't be stated enough. If Smith & Wesson gave the SAF $1 million, that would go far in helping our rights. They have 37, 38 cases right now active fighting for us. So I think it's incumbent on us to help them.
Can I just add to that? Those 38 courses would be funded. So now you talk about adversaries who are like strategizing what's next in their 40 chess games or whatever. And if there was a situation where every time they put something up, there's a fully funded resource like the Second Amendment Foundation that's going to challenge it, they're going to go after swimming pools or stairs or, you know, unattended luggage at airplanes. They're going to go after something that doesn't have a constitutionally protected right behind it, and all of us advocates. So we just have to get better at it. So I think that you're right that they would, a little bit of money to those efforts would, well, in scheme of things, a little bit of money.
Well, I'm going to touch on that in just 1 second, but there is a question there for you today. He says, is the Jewish community mostly anti-gun, or are the antis just more vocal? With history, he doesn't see how they could be anti, and I don't want to speculate, so I'll let you answer that if you choose to.
Yeah, sure. So I mean, this is like I just answered him. You know, this is an entire podcast in itself.
Right? Yeah, exactly.
Jews and guns. What I'm about to say is not a blanket statement, so I don't want anyone to take it as a blanket statement. But you have Orthodox Judaism, Conservative Judaism, and Reformed Judaism. Now, Reformed and Conservative Judaism, in a lot of cases, tend to be a lot more left-leaning and liberal. So, among that crowd, you do happen to have a lot of anti-gun Jews. Now, keep in mind the biggest gun grabbers in the U.S. government, you know, Feinstein, Bloomberg, Blumenthal, all those so-called Jews are Jews in ethnicity only. They don't practice, they don't do anything. So, but unfortunately, that's who the U.S. sees as, you know, the biggest gun grabbers are Jews. Now, Orthodox Jews tend to be more, because we follow the Old Testament and our mindset really is the Judeo-Christian value system. Orthodox Jews tend to be more pro-gun. But that said, a lot of them are, we're okay with you owning guns, we just don't want to have anything to do with it. Or it's, we own guns, but we're going to be very quiet about it because we don't want to be, you know, a pariah within our Jewish community. So that's why you don't see a lot of Jews out there doing what I'm doing.
Right.
Being a very vocal, you know, I mean, look, I'm an Orthodox Jew. I pray 3 times a day. I go to synagogue. I go through the whole motions. I can't tell you how much business I've lost because I can't go to shows on Saturday. It's my Sabbath. But at the same time, though, I am out there speaking my mind. You know, I always say never again means nothing if you're not willing to do something about it. So, yeah.
Can I throw out there, and obviously I don't know there's no way to know every person of any kind of whatever subcategory of anything, right? But I know a couple of people out here in Arizona that are Jewish that are, I would say, a third level where they're gun owners and not necessarily, and gun owners to the level of we remember the past and we're gun owners so that it'll never happen again. But then at the same time strategic where they're not wearing NRA badges around because they also remember the past and they're not about to be first in line to hand anything over. So I'd like to think that there's a portion of the Jewish population in the whole world that is still has that memory, right? And they're never going to necessarily be like, oh, I'm proud NRA, but at home they're well defended.
Yeah, no, but that's exactly what it is. You know, unfortunately, like I said, a lot of them are very pro-gun and even own guns, but they don't publicize the fact. I mean, not when I say publicize, they're not out there saying, ooh, you know, look at me, I've got an AR and this and whatever. I'm talking about more, they're not out there actually advocating for gun rights. I see, you know, I mean, look, we have now in the Senate or in Congress, we have, what's her name? Ilhan Omar, whatever her name is, and Rashida, whatever, both who are known anti-Semites in U.S. Congress. If you don't think it can happen in America, you're wrong. Something like the Holocaust could happen in America. I don't think it will. I think there are too many good Americans out there that would never allow it to happen. But you have your anti-Semites around, and that's why I'm, every Jew is 762.
Now, let me ask you this. Coming from a people that has seen firsthand what a government can do if they disarm the people, does that play in? And you said that a Holocaust could happen in America, but isn't that the exact reason that the Second Amendment exists? Honestly, when it breaks right down to the bones, isn't the reason that the Second Amendment exists to protect ourselves from a tyrannical government?
No, 100%. And that, when you ask someone that, as someone who's Jewish, that they don't really have an answer. They're like, well, but it won't happen here. But it won't happen here. I'm like, okay, but what happens if it does?
Yeah, exactly.
There's
a lot of what ifs.
Yeah, no, exactly. There's a lot of what ifs. I mean, also look at the fact that the entire left for the last 3 years they've been calling Trump Hitler nonstop, but at the same time they're like, oh, civilians shouldn't own guns, only the government. Like,
that's the problem.
Yeah, exactly. No, but unfortunately that is the exact problem. Is that you have a very large group of Americans who are calling for the disarmament of civilians, and that only the government should have guns, and they're calling the current president Hitler when he's nothing, obviously, like Hitler. And I'm not remotely worried what would happen under his presidency with the Jews. But you have any of the 4,000 new candidates in the Democratic race for presidency, any one of them, I'd be terrified to have as a president, knowing that my gun rights have been taken away from me. Right. Forget just as an American, but as a Jew, I'd be terrified.
Sure. Now, I want to go back and talk about something that G brought up earlier about the major manufacturers coming in and dumping money into supporting different things. And it's not just on this panel, but on a lot of panels and in just the community in general for the last couple of years. Now that Bloomberg has obviously thrown his hat into the ring and to financially support bills at the state and federal level that are obvious anti-gun bills. And a lot of people sit there and say, where's our Bloomberg? Who's going to be our Bloomberg? We may not have a one-person Bloomberg, but I think what G says is if we start getting a lot of these major manufacturers to get together to start funding the SAF, NRA, and start funding initiatives to stop these, we don't have to have our own Bloomberg. We have our industry. And so I want to start with Clover. Do you think the industry would make a dent in anything if they were to start putting their financial resources into supporting I would say legislation or lawsuits that would fight anti-gun legislation?
I don't think that it necessarily takes, I don't think that it necessarily is, it's certainly not just a matter of money. Okay. I think that having the backing and the knowledge and the contacts within the firearms industry as a whole, I think could be greatly beneficial to these Second Amendment organizations, that alone. And I'm basing that on some of the things that some firearm companies have done in the past to curtail certain legislative issues, not just in, nationally, but on state and city levels as well. And then certainly if you throw the monetary aspect in there, yeah, it could. But I think a bigger issue, and that's what you started the show off with, the bigger issue is, what is that money going to do? And said organizations, how are they going to best utilize that, right? Are they in a political mode where it's like our government, to where they spend, on paper, we know it's not true, $15,000 on a hammer that you can buy for 10 in your local hardware store, and it's the exact same hammer. So make no mistake, the money is not going to the stupid hammer. Are they running things like that, or are they running it in a financially conservative manner to where those funds and those resources are going to where they need to go. And then I also think there's an aspect where the organizations fight the wrong fight. And it remains to be seen with the whole bump stock thing, what goes down. But I said early on when the ruling came down on that and they went to start filing the suits and stuff, they sort of had the suits done before the ruling ever came down. And I don't see how you can do that. And then I read through that ruling, 4 or 5 times probably now. And I'm still not sure that their suit is tailored the way that it needs to be. Now, admittedly, they've got access to lawyers that went to law school and I didn't. And hopefully they went to a really good law school and they know things that I don't know. But just as a spectator looking at that, so I think there's a bunch more aspects, just with the, it's an uphill battle. It's going to be to get the industry involved at more of a level than they are now. But then we can't do that. It's one of them things to where, again, we got to put in the work and it's going to take time. And you can't just say, well, okay, we've got the industry on board and they're dumping, millions of dollars into these organizations now. Well, now you've got to go to the organizations and say, how are you spending this money? This is the fights that need to be fought. These are the type of people in the organization, right? We know that's an issue now with the NRA, that the upper echelon of the NRA seems to be more political operative than they are Second Amendment activists.
Yeah. We got a buddy of ours out there, Tim Knight, and Tim is a good friend and he is in a position, we won't discuss it on air, but he is a position of knowledge about where these organizations come from. So Tim's a good friend. He says out there, and I'm just going to go ahead and say what he was saying so that people can hear it. But Timothy, goodness gracious, he said that money is important, but active citizens can combat money in a major way. And I think that that's really kind of what is a good point. But in Mid-Right Range TM out there says we don't need our own Bloomberg. We need up 2 million regular people. And we have that. We have that. We have millions and millions of regular everyday people that support not just the NRA, but a lot of different organizations out there. And I think we're already there. But what I was trying to say is if some of the manufacturers would get involved, they bring more attention. If Smith & Wesson or Glock or Ruger or Springfield Armory, these people come out publicly and say what the government is doing against the Second Amendment is wrong, and we're here to publicly support any initiative and any lawsuit that goes against any of these bills. You want to see a rallying cry? That's all you got to do is once I think the people are already there, but once there is public perception of not just the people, but the entire industry, the people, the manufacturers, everyone on the same page, that's when the other side, and I'm not going to say the liberals or the Democrats, it has nothing to do with party, guys. It's pro-gun and anti-gun. Pro-gun and anti-gun knows no party. Let's be real. It's either you're pro-gun or you're anti-gun, and it doesn't matter. We all know friends of ours that are liberal Democrats that are very pro-gun. So, and we also know conservative Republicans that are probably anti-gun. So it's not say it's a left-right thing. It's a pro-gun or anti-gun thing. I want to bring Budget in here real quick and say this. I want to start transitioning to different organizations. The NRA. I'm going to throw you out this softball for you. Okay?
Alrighty.
Here we go. If there was one thing that you wish the NRA would do to change what they're doing, what would the one change the NRA could do that would make you happy? I know there's a long list, but if you could pick one, what would you want to see the NRA do?
I think I would like to see them circle back. And what I mean by that is that the NRA does a fantastic job of damage control. They are the 800-pound gorilla. They have a seat at the table when these laws are being drafted. They have their fingers in it. I believe they are working, and they have successfully made these laws that have come, these gun control laws, not as bad as they would have otherwise been had the NRA not been sitting at the table. I think they do a great job at that. What I would love to see them do is once these laws are passed, circle back and whether be legislatively or through litigation, get them fixed. The things that are wrong with them, okay, so we had to give up, I don't know. Let's say we had to give up lightened triggers in order to keep 30-round magazines. Well, okay, great. Then you circle back and fight to reclaim that ground that you've lost, because all that they've been doing is fighting defensively and giving up a little bit. And while we're not losing as much as we would have otherwise, we're still losing ground. We need to get that ground back. And that's what I'd like to see them do. They don't focus on that. That's why I think organizations like the Second Amendment Foundation are important, because they do then attack it on the back end to try to reclaim what we've already lost.
Anyone have anything that you want to add or anything that you would bring up?
Yeah, that opens a great segue.
Yes, it does. Go ahead.
For me, in something, this is not anything I wanted to state necessarily about the NRA, but that was a great segue to a conversation that was going on in the chat. When somebody out there says something about we need to tell these politicians, we don't like what they're doing and we need to get rid of these politicians and whatever. And it's kind of the same as what Budget just alluded to. What happens though with that, and I agree that we need to be doing that, but when a law gets passed, when an anti-second regulation, statute, law, definition change, whatever it might be, goes through, getting mad and you get rid of the politicians doesn't do bumpkus for that regulation that's in play. It doesn't automatically roll it back because those people are out of office. And I think the NRA knows that. And so it's very easy and very cheap for the NRA to go, oh, well, this went through. Now we're going to fight it and we're going to talk bad about it and rail against it. Well, why didn't you do more beforehand, in trying to stop it from going through? Or why don't you contribute money and resources to, and I'm speaking not just in the capacity of the NRA, but also the people that want to say, oh, it's the politicians and we have to get rid of the politicians. That's part of the equation. But then the NRA, us as supporters, whatever it might be, we have to put more focus into, number one, stopping it before it ever starts. And then number two, actually fighting to get it removed on top of the regulations and legislation removed on top of the whole getting rid of the politicians that did it. It's a multi-sum game.
Yeah.
No, I just want to say that I don't think that what the NRA does is, not to talk bad about the NRA necessarily, but we can't let.
No, go ahead. I talk bad about them all the time.
No, I'm saying we can't let these bills pass. I mean, I'm not talking, like you said, whether it's the Republicans, Democrats, doesn't make a difference. We all know the famous Benjamin Franklin quote. Those who would give up essential liberty to purchase a little temporary safety, they don't deserve liberty or safety. I mean, when you're dealing with the Second Amendment, the minute you allow things to pass through, it emboldens the gun grabbers to now start pushing even more and more and more. Mm-hmm. And the minute you allow one thing like the bump stock, all they want to do, I mean, the minute the bump stock, Trump banned the bump stock, the next thing you know, you have the assault weapons ban of 2019.
Yeah.
Now, at this point, who knows if it would pass? Just because the Republicans seem to be spineless. So I'm kind of against the NRA doing, the bump stock, it's just one little thing, and then they're the ones that are telling Trump that it's okay to ban it, and then the minute Trump bans it, what was the NRA's response? I think they came out with a thing that said, "We're disappointed." Yeah, no crap, you're disappointed. I mean, that's the weakest, response ever, and it's because of you. So I don't think that we should allow any kind of legislation to be passed, or, we need to hold Trump's feet to the fire when he passes anti-gun laws.
If he signs any. At
the same time that you said that there's the spineless or whatever, Republicans don't have a background, it emboldens the antis. So
exactly.
Yeah.
Right. So when they see that there's an easy blood in the water, they're opportunists.
No doubt. And now there's some people out there talking about if it's an illegal law, we shouldn't follow. Well, first of all, there's no such thing as an illegal law. There is a law that's either constitutional or it's unconstitutional. And that's why we have the Supreme Court to decipher the terminology to see if it's unconstitutional or constitutional. And I am not here to tell anybody what to do if there are confiscation laws or something that's built in. I'm not here to tell you what to do. You are going to have to make your own decision. But I will say this, and you can sit there and disagree with me. And if you don't like it, then you can turn my channel off and not ever watch me again. If it comes down to a law that says that someone has the right to come and take your guns, then aren't we always claim to be quote unquote law-abiding citizens. And I think that that's an argument that the gun community has. All we are law-abiding citizens, normal everyday law-abiding citizens that just happen to love guns. If you're going to claim to be a law-abiding citizen that loves the Second Amendment, then I'm telling you, if there is a law that you may think is unconstitutional, but the Supreme Court rules against that and says, yeah, it's constitutional, and for some reason you got to give your guns up, then they can come to my house and whatever guns they find, they can most definitely take, and they want to have zero argument from me. Because if we're going to claim to be law-abiding citizens, then we have to follow laws even if we do not agree with them. That's what being America is. If you don't want these laws to be passed, then do your civil duty and go vote someone in that will not pass these bills into law. If you're worried about it, then go vote for a president that won't sign these or might bring in someone in the Supreme Court that might find these unconstitutional. But I'm tired of hearing Civil War this and Civil War that. I will not comply. That's on you. That's fine. Do what you got to do. But for me, I'm a law-abiding citizen. Now, am I going to help them find my guns? Nope. If they happen to find one or two of them, they're there to confiscate, take them. But that's on you. But I'm going to sit there saying, let's not get carried away out there about talking revolution and civil war and from my cold dead hands. It's a great speech and it's a great motto, but let's be real, guys. Do we really want to fight a war against the U.S. government over guns? I don't know.
But at what point is enough enough?
Well, that's a great point. What is enough enough?
Right. I mean, let's be honest. The Revolutionary War kicked off because of gun confiscation.
That's right.
So I'm not calling for a revolutionary war, but
no, I'm not saying, I'm saying there's people out there that's talking.
Right, for sure. But
that's the scope. That's
at what point do we say no? We'll not comply anymore. This is ridiculous. The idea of having life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness has been thrown out, and we have no way to defend ourselves. Once you give up those guns, it's over. It's absolutely over. You have no way of fighting back in any way. So if there is a law that is passed that says we're allowed to come and take your guns, whether you agree with it or not, yes, it might be a law, but at what point? It's that famous when something along the lines when guns are banned, I'll become a outlaw or something like that.
Right. I'll be yeah, exactly.
You know what I'm talking about.
Exactly, yeah.
So at what point, do we say no? You're not coming for our guns, and we're willing to fight you for it.
That's a very, very good question, and I don't think any of us have that answer. And I think that you're going to have to make those decisions yourself. And I think that what I was trying to get the comment is there are a bunch of people that are going to be revolutionary in their statements and all that. They're calling for revolution. They're calling for let's stand up and fight. And I'm all for standing up and fighting. But we also claim to be a part of the sector of this country that is a law-abiding citizen. And I think it's hilarious, the hypocrisy that within our own community and within our own culture, people sit there and say, we're just law-abiding citizens, guys, but I will not comply with that law. Then you're not law-abiding, you know? So,
but
I
take it back to we're talking about uniting the organizations that kind of got off topic.
Yeah,
still
you're right.
A minority of the conversation, a minority of the segment of the population that have an attitude or even that position. So can I throw something in on what I think
Please do. Yeah.
Budget was talking about before? And it's, I guess, an alternative maybe point of view or playing devil's advocate, but something like NRA, everybody, and I'm not one to feed the blame of like, let's shake our fists and delegate responsibility to somebody else, as if the NRA was supposed to do this and they didn't, and it's not our fault, so we can slough off all responsibility because they didn't do what we wanted them to do. So to play devil's advocate to that, if you're an organization trying to put yourself realistically in the shoes of the organization and not the individuals who we don't like, but the organization, knowing the apathy that we have as a community and the fickleness we have to our allegiance to the real troopers, the Second Amendment, and how fickle we can be and how much apathy we have and we experience as the NRA, do you think that it's possible for them to do all the things that we, the hardest of core 2A advocates, would like them to do? Or is that unrealistic for the NRA, who's trying to appeal to, I'm sure the whole 30 million gun owners that are out there? That includes people that have a shotgun in their closet that grandpa gave them, and they're technically a gun owner, but that's about as far as they're a gun owner. And then they got people like us that have collections and are interested in everything in between. So do the national organizations do what they want, or they do what their membership is willing to do? They have a lot of experience motivating and working with their organizations, and we look at them and scorn them because their methods or their marketing campaigns don't appeal to us. But is that a factor necessarily of what they want to do? Like they can do anything and they choose to do that? Or is that their hands tied at a level, at that level and that scale, they only have fewer options and we're just not paying attention to that?
That's a great point.
Well, that sounds like, part of what you're saying there is, with them, they get certain feedback, right? They've got this feedback coming in, and we're talking about the NRA and it being the largest, oldest, whatever organization out there, the big dog on the block. Imagine the amount of hate and vitriol that they get on a regular basis from the left, the anti-gun side, so forth and so on. And even the ill-informed that's been bamboozled by the anti-gun side. Imagine the amount of hate they get. So one thing that I question is, because you've got a hardened sector on the pro-gun side that is, forget the NRA, burn it down, move on to something else. They never want to offer solutions. They just want to gripe and complain. And, what I'm wondering is, what type of communication is had with the NRA? And is it had in such a way that the NRA sees it? Because if you're tweeting at the NRA or getting on their Facebook or, whatever, and you do it with vitriol and hate and everything else, well, guess what? It's going to get dismissed. It's going to get lost in the mix of all the other vitriol and hate that they're getting from the anti-gunners. So we have to do it differently. We have to act differently. And I think that that's one approach that we got to take, not only just with these organizations when we don't agree with it or whatever. We have to have a well thought out, articulated response. Passionate, sure.
Yes.
But we don't have to tear down and be hateful in it either. And
I think a lot of it comes down to, and I'll come right back to it in a second, but I think I'm not very smart, so I have to kind of talk when I have a thought, because it might go away. But I think a lot of it's what you're saying is also, as voters, we talk about voting in our local, state, and federal elections and hold our representatives accountable. Why shouldn't that be the same for our Second Amendment organizations? If you are a member of an organization, please vote when it comes up to having your representatives on the board of directors. And I think I know where you're transitioning to, Clover, so I want to bring it back to you here in a second. But if you're not holding the organizations that you're giving money to, and just like G said, if you're going to give an organization $100 a year, that doesn't mean that you've given up your voice and you're allowing them to vote for you in proxy. That means that you are supporting an organization that might have a bigger reach than you personally do, but that doesn't mean you step back and do nothing. We still have our own responsibilities to take care of at our own personal level. And I think that's kind of where you were getting ready to go. Am I not right, Clover? To a certain extent about our responsibility as an NRA or maybe members of the NRA or whatever.
I mean, it's the same way it's the same way that we need to be, you know, we vote, but we don't vote. And then, well, a lot of the country does. And that's indicative of a whole other problem. But the correct way is to vote and then stay involved enough that we know what's going on. That way we can hold those that we voted for. We can hold their feet to the fire. It works the same as donating to these organizations. But again, if you do it with, and I'll go ahead and address this. I was fixing to, it's along this lines, but Pete out there, he says hateful or passionate. Right. And the thing about passion, okay, is if you're not articulate and if you're not careful, and it's F-bomb this and F-bomb that and shall not be infringed, if you can't sit down and articulate out your thoughts, then you may not want to contact them and even say anything, right? Because it's not going to go over well. People don't take kindly to other people yelling and screaming in their face. We complain about that from the anti-gunners and every other issue, social or otherwise, that we deal with, people that are on the left side of said issue. And we make fun of them that because they're kicking and screaming and hollering, and then we want to do the same thing. And that right there tells me that, we've got to do things differently if we're going to get the attention of those people that we want to hold their feet to the fire.
Let's play out a scenario here. And I just go with me on this, and we'll kind of pass this around the room and see maybe what your suggestions are to unify the organizations. But here's one that I've been thinking about. And this is, can we talk about utilizing each organizational strength? Okay. So we know that the NRA, that's going to be our political strong arm. That's our hammer with the politicians. So we utilize the NRA, whatever consolidated message we can come up with. NRA is our political strong arm. They're very good at it. Whether we like what they do or not, they're there. They have a voice in Washington. Then you have the Second Amendment Foundation, which are going to be basically our judicial savers. They're the ones that are going to go out there and bring lawsuits about bills that are anti-gun or unconstitutional. They're going to be our voice in the court system. Then you have someone like the GOA, and Eric Pratt is extremely good in front of a camera. Why not maybe talk to the GOA? They're more of our PR firm for the Second Amendment. At this point, we've now utilized all. FPC can come in with court cases and with rising up and trying to bring the people along with them. They're smaller, but they are gaining a lot of headway pretty quickly. But we start utilizing these different organizations instead of trying to have one of them be the end all be all. We all sit there and say NRA's this, NRA's that, GOA's this, GOA's that, SAF is this and that. Not one of these organizations are the end all be all. They all have things that they are extremely good at. Whether we agree with their tactics or not is one thing, but they're very good at certain things. That being said, could we not utilize that in a situation where the NRA could be the political, SAF be our judicial, and our GOA be our press secretary? If you start talking about politicals, they're our press secretary, our media relations. You have all this and the other. Is that possible? Do you guys think that's possible? And if so, or if not, I'm going to start with Yuta. Is something like that possible? And if not, do you have any suggestions, or what would be your plan to try to unify the organizations?
I mean, I definitely think it's possible, but I think you're dealing with some very big alpha male egos.
That's for sure.
In a lot of the organizations. And I can't picture some of those organizations working together. I don't think, just to give you a small example, was it 2 years ago at the NRA show when the NRA 2 weeks before the show kicked out the USCCA, canceled their, was it 2 years, the one at Atlanta, I believe?
Yes.
Right? How do you work with an organization like that?
Exactly. That's tough.
It's tough. And if we're talking about the NRA being the biggest one out there, how do you expect 2AF, FPC, GOA? I mean, hell, you can even say NAGR. I mean,
yep.
How do you expect any of them to work alongside a organization that is afraid of competition or is afraid of someone outdoing them possibly? It's not going to happen. So I can maybe see the smaller organizations banding together in some way or another, but I don't think that any of them will be. I don't think you will be able to consolidate all of them with the NRA. I don't think the NRA would allow it.
Okay, so let me ask you this real quick. I think your thoughts on the NRA go along with a lot of people's, including myself, for certain reasons. But we all have our different reasons for not trusting the NRA to a certain extent or whatever. But is there something that can be done, in your opinion, to change the NRA? Is there anything that we can do that's legitimate?
I mean, it's tough. On one hand, we just talked about, you can go out and vote.
Right.
You can vote for your people. I personally have voted for some people that I think will make a huge difference in the NRA, but the chances of them getting on the board is very slim.
Right.
I'm sure a lot of us might be thinking of the one person,
sure,
the Adam Kraut guy, who I absolutely love, but I just don't see. It's exactly like you're with the government. You can vote these people in, but you would have to vote a lot of them in order for real change to be made.
Now, there's a friend of mine, and I think most of us all know him, and we probably have talked with him. He is a board member of the NRA and may not be well liked by some of the other board members, but I think that's board in general. There are board members in every company that don't like the other because they have different agendas. But if there is a board member that says that the biggest thing we can do is to get more people to come in and vote the right types of board members in, people don't realize there are 75 board members, 75 or 76 board members on the NRA. So people say, well, what's one going to do? There's nothing's going to happen to one or two. You're right, but there are a lot of board members that don't even show up to board meetings. There's a lot of board members that don't even vote on certain things. So why are we keep electing board members that don't take their job seriously or their responsibility seriously? It's kind of up to the people. And once again, I'm coming from someone who's not a supporter of the NRA. But I think that if the NRA is going to want to be taken seriously, then the board itself has to take the responsibility seriously. And if they're not, then possibly getting new board members could be a way to start the change. Is it going to be overnight? Hell no, it's not going to be overnight. It's going to take for a long time to get this done. But understanding that the things that drive most people crazy is not necessarily the NRA. It is the ILA arm of the NRA. The NRA itself still does phenomenal things with youth shooting and instruction and youth gun awareness and certification for instructors. I mean, it's a wonderful organization in a lot of sense, but the ILA kind of covers all of that up. So if you're unhappy with some of the political stuff that the ILA is doing, the NRA, write them a letter. And don't just write it to the NRA, write it to the individual board member in an envelope with a stamp on it, not an email. Write a letter to the NRA and address it to that individual board member. They are obligated to give that letter to the board member. If you start flooding the NRA with letters to the board members themselves, not to the NRA, but to the individual board members, you're going to start seeing something happen. Find out which board members aren't doing their jobs. Ask them which board members are showing up for meetings. Find out which ones aren't doing a dang thing. Okay. Adam Kraut, attorney from all I hear about him. I've never had much discussion with him. I heard he's a wonderful guy. I think it's going to be hard for Adam to get voted in. I don't think that there are people that are already on the NRA that want change. So you have to force change. That means that if you are an NRA member and you are a voting member, you have a voting privilege, and you don't vote, then keep your mouth shut about the NRA.
You know, I do have to say one thing. I think an easier solution is not voting the board members in. I do think that, and I could be wrong about this, and I know we were talking. I know the one person on the board member that you mentioned a second ago, who's on the board, who might not be liked by other board members.
Right.
I know exactly who you're talking about, and I have to be very close with that person.
Yes.
That said, I really think money talks.
Sure.
I think the only way you will see real change at the NRA is when people stop paying membership.
Or the $55 million that have been reported that they lost in the last year.
Exactly.
$55 million is a lot of money.
And we're talking about, I mean, we were at, SHOT Show a few weeks ago. I don't know if you realize, but the NRA did not have a booth on Radio Row this year.
Right.
And from what I heard, again, this is just what I heard. I don't know if it's the case. Money was very tight. So
$55 million is nothing to shake a stick at,
Exactly. And I don't think that, I think the best way to make a real change at the NRA is hit them where it hurts in terms of money. I don't think going after board members will do anything.
I think that to a certain extent, you're probably right, but I think what it could do, and I'm not saying it's going to change or shift policy of the NRA, but I think what it could do is if there are board members that are continuously voted on and almost basically unopposed in these elections, and I think that there are starting to be people that are voted off the board, I think if nothing else, it sends a little shockwave to the top and say, hey, something's going on. People are starting to get a little more active in the voting side. What's going on? Because I think that we can all agree they probably lost touch with the people, just like the politicians in Washington. Let's be honest. They've lost touch with reality and what their constituents are. And that's what we are to the NRA as well. We're talking political. We're constituents to our representatives. But the NRA represents us for the Second Amendment, and we are their constituents as far as that. And I think they've all kind of lost touch with the people. Budget, G, Clover, you guys have anything that you want to add to this conversation?
Yes.
Go ahead.
Clover got his up there first, though.
Nah, go ahead, G. I'm good. Go ahead.
So, number one, if you're a defeatist, then are we talking to the defeatists out there? We got 40 people watching us live right now. 43 thumbs. Thank you for that. But 40 people watching us, I'm guessing, just watching the chat go by on the YouTube side, maybe 10 people that are super pessimistic and everything. Nothing can never happen good. It's always good. They're out to get us, and there's nothing that can be done except to, I guess, wither up and float away in the wind. So not offering any kind of solutions and crapping on everything else. So it seems like we're having a discussion with those few people. There's 30 people out there that we don't know what their opinions are because they're not, participating in the chat to let us know their opinion or whatever. So they're watching. But I suspect it's a portion of the people that are fatalists or, don't see any hope ever. But I don't think that way. We've already changed the NRA over and over and over. So number one, the internet. Is the NRA on the internet today? Yes. Did anybody have a big rally? Did we have discussions like this? How do we get the NRA on the internet? Nope. We're on the internet. The NRA came to the internet. Women. NRA focuses on women. Did we all sit around saying, hey, NRA, focus on women. Come on, come on, come on. Maybe some people did. And I don't want to discourage the people that made that effort originally to get them to do it. But it happened because we appreciate females in the gun community. We've changed the NRA over and over and over. If we expect them to pivot on a dime, that's unrealistic. But we do have influence, and changing boards of directors is an indication that their membership is unsatisfied. And you can just be discouraged because I voted for a member and that member didn't win. Or I voted for a member and the thing hasn't changed 180 degrees. That's unrealistic. But if you are willing to put in the time and you're willing to mow the lawn every week, so that, you know, in the bigger scheme of things, you have a nice looking yard. It's not I wish I could mow the lawn once and always have a good yard. Then you have green paint on stone, right? You don't have a yard anymore. So if we want an NRA that adapts to everything we want, that's not the NRA that's not the NRA that's effective anymore. So I think there's lots of things we can do, but certainly complaining and being fatalist about it is not the thing to do. So changing the NRA, I think it's valuable and I think it's doable, and I don't think it's done overnight. I think it's done by lots of little things, and we've all come up with constructive things, but discussions like this are key because this allows us to have, you know, more thought about it, the people that are listening to this and the people that listen to this after this. And if you want to be a part of this momentum and a part of this, share this, grab the little link, the URL, put it on another platform, get the word out. The tubes and wires and stuff that watch the internet will see that and they'll distribute it. They'll recommend it to more people. Other people will hear the nuggets of information that we've brought up, and other people will say, hey, maybe I should run for the board, or maybe I should pay attention to that letter that comes in. And eventually the NRA gets changed. But I think it's unrealistic to think we're going to change the NRA like that.
Exactly. And that was my whole point, is this is going to take a long time. Is it doable? I think it is. And to your point right there, and we've talked about this in different scenarios, but the people that are here tonight on this panel, we don't have all the answers. We're just people that have an opinion that are voicing that. But what I hope that you take from this discussion is to start your own discussion. And if we can have 1,000 of these discussions every day with 50 people at a time, that's a lot of people having this discussion. The way you're going to make change is first you have to have a discussion about change. And if we're not going to discuss the thought of change, then how can we expect change to happen? So I thank you so much for that statement, G, because this right here, all this is a seed. This, amongst 20 other conversations that I hope are happening at the same time across YouTube right now, need to be seeds to sit there and say, guys, we all know that it's jacked up. We all know that things need to change, but we can't just sit there and say we want change, but aren't willing to do anything about it or have a discussion on about how to change. We're not saying that we have all the answers. We're not saying that these are the right answers. We're saying that if you have a better answer, run with it. We all have a voice. We all have our own thoughts, and how you want to get something done is different than I am, but have more conversations, and change is inevitable. Change is going to happen whether we like it or not. We might as well be on the right side of it. Clover, what were you going to say?
Well, had two things. I got three now. So to follow up on what you and G-Webs was talking about real quick, it's really simple. Nothing throughout history has ever been done. No movement has ever won the day through negativity and pessimism. So, you know, we've got to have a positive message. We want to talk about the anti-gun side, and we want to talk about all the leftist, you know, movements and threats and whatever, and look at a lot of their message. Okay. It's save the children. Okay. Yes, it's an anti-gun message that they're pushing, but their mission statement, their mantra is a very positive thing. It's save the children. Where we say stop gun confiscation. Well, that's not a positive message. We've got to find another way to communicate. Okay. And then we got to keep it in a positive light. But to get to the board thing, there was one thing I want to mention about the board, and then talk about another aspect of the NRA that Yehuda commented on earlier. But to talk about the board, you know, if you take, and I invite everybody to do this, I mean, take some time, figure out your board members, you know, try to fit, you know, the bad thing is there's a lot of talk out there in the chat. There's a lot of talk everywhere about, you know, oh, the board, you know, writing the board, changing the board, doing this with the board. It won't do nothing. It won't do nothing. It won't do nothing. Well, I always come back with that. Well, then what's your solution? And then nobody comes back really with anything, right? The only solution that you really hear is defund them. That's the only other solution that you hear. You hear no other solutions being thrown out. Well, that tells me that people really aren't thinking about things, most likely. They're just parroting what they're hearing certain people say. So with writing the board, one thing that a lot of conversation in the chat was revolving around was, well, what do? They don't have no power. They can't do this. And what? Well, we don't know. We don't know who doesn't show up for meetings. There's a lack of transparency that's astonishing from a board that we elect and it's supposed to represent us. That's got to stop. So if you write a letter, put that in there that we want transparency. We want records on the voting. We want the voting be all done above board and out in the open. We want transparency on who's showing up to the meetings. We want to know what's going on. There's no reason that we shouldn't be privy to that we shouldn't know that. And we don't want to know that in articles that come out after the fact that the NRA board, talked about this or did that. I mean, we want some real-time analytical stuff that's going on. We're in 2019. And that's totally possible in this day and age. So that's one of the things that I would encourage that you ask for if you decide to do that, so that we can formulate. We can't formulate any type of plan of attack or anything else, or formulate better solutions until we can get to a point till we know exactly what we need to do that. And then finally, on what Yehuda had talked about, one thing that bothers me, because this is a huge thing with me in the NRA, is and it's not the NRA ILA, it's not the NRA at their headquarters, right? But it's the NRA on the grassroots and the ground level, and it's a big deal when you're talking about this next generation of firearm owners. Okay, the next generation that will be Second Amendment advocates, hopefully. By all accounts, we're dealing with a fairly conservative generation coming up, and so if we defund them too much, and having sort of an inside track on knowing how funding works and some other things with grants and some other things, the ILA has robbed the other arms for years. And that's fairly easy to see when you see how, what the people that are on the ground have to work with, and the support that they get from the NRA compared to the suit wearing people like Cox and LaPierre and flying around in jets and doing all this other stuff. You can see where their focus is, right? So, if those arms, I guess I put it out in the chat, I said the ILA has become the head basically of the NRA, and it should be an arm. And then the training and the outreach is an arm and a leg and that sort of thing, right? And it's unfortunately it's not that way. The ILA is the head. So by starving that, I don't know. I worry that we hurt a generation that is time sensitive, right? Because we talked about tearing the NRA completely down and then something else will rise up. Well, you've got 4 or 5 years. If that doesn't happen in 4 or 5 years, you've lost half a generation at that point of kiddos. So, that impact could be massive, and we've really got to pay attention to that, I think.
I agree. Budget, you've been quiet. Do you have anything you want to add or comment on?
Well, yeah, a couple things.
Yeah.
I think that with the executive leadership that's in place at the NRA, that that's kind of where the problem lies, particularly with the ILA. But I also have to echo that the other side of the NRA is outstanding, and it's really what we need. We need that outreach with the youth shooters. We need that educational piece. Those are things that the NRA does extremely well, and that we need them to keep doing. As far as the board goes, well, that's also part of the reason why I rejoined the NRA, was so that I can eventually, once, I think it's 5 years you have to be a member in order to be a voting member, because I want to get to that point, so that I can continue, so that I can have my voice heard and counted. So that's where we're at. I think that G was right, and that Clover was right, is that the change isn't going to come overnight with them, and we're going to have to dedicate ourselves to making our voice heard. Making our presence felt with those that are in power in the NRA, so that they can, so that they might get the idea that they're not doing what their constituents, which you're right, that's what we are. They're not doing what we want. Just like I say every time I do a show, as I end it, about, you know, making sure that we hold our politicians' feet to the fire and let them know what we think in any way that we can. I think we have to do this with the NRA too. That's it. I got to go to work. So thanks for having me on the show.
Hey, plug your stuff real quick before you head out.
I'm Mike. This is Budget Guns and Gear Reviews here on YouTube. I'm also on GunTube, GunStreamer, UGEtube, Facebook, Instagram, Twitter. My website is www.budgetgunsandgear.com. Check it out. I do a live stream every week here on YouTube called The Right of the People. It is simulcast over on GunChannels, so make sure that you're a member over there, where we talk about Second Amendment news and politics. As I like to say, we use the first to defend the second. So have a good one, folks.
Hey, thanks, Budget. Appreciate you, buddy.
Hey, no problem. Thanks for having me.
Anytime, bud. Yeah, there's a comment out there that says maybe the NRA is pro-compromise because they don't have faith in the public being able to band together enough to fight and stop legislation. So they'd rather lose a little bit. He's just thinking out loud. That came from Mohawk Boy out there. And I think there's some validity to that. I think that, you know, we all talk about change. And we talk about we want to change this and we want to do that. And there is a side of me that says sometimes you get what you ask for. And if you want sudden change in something that's going to have to radically happen for there to be sudden change, you're going to have to dance with the girl that brought you. So we might want to we might want to think about what's going to happen if we want sudden change in the array. And I think that what everyone's saying, and I agree with 100%. If we're going to change it, then it has to be over time, slowly but surely. You're not going to change policy. You're not going to change, 100 years of a way of thinking overnight.
Can I get it off
go ahead.
For a minute? So the topic was getting the organizations, unifying the two-way organizations. What can we do?
Yeah.
So in 2012, right, I went out and I drove around and tried to get YouTubers together because I didn't, not financially as much as just I enjoy what the internet can do for communication and furthering that. And it was obvious even in 12 that there was some potential with the ease of contributing video content to the internet, right? There was going to be potential there. So we reached out, and then in 2013, we barely had a chance to start getting everybody together and figuring out that we were a community, right? That we were more than just some people that happened to enjoy gun stuff. We happen to be people that went online almost exclusively for gun stuff. And we enjoyed having conversations with the electronic means, right? Being able to have actual conversation and not just all read the same article and then make comments on the article. Instead, we were able to have conversations and be part of an ongoing larger conversation and give a community actual direction. And then we had the 2012 and 2012, and then Obama's reaction to that with the 23 executive actions. And then we saw a grassroots resistance to that in 2013 that wasn't orchestrated by any individual. There was no blueprint for that. It happened because we all had the facility and we were all skilled and familiar enough with our means of communication. And more importantly, and crucially, our audiences were able to keep up with us and in fact urged people to do even more. So all of this innovation and everything was happening, as a result of an impetus from the outside, a political influence. So we saw that started to wane in the end of 2013. And those of us that had been on the internet long enough and had been part of this, sporadic conversation saw that the conversation came to an effective, useful head that did something. It had consequence. We resisted Obama's, intent, and then it just dissipated. The apathy was like palatable. It was just there. You could tell that people, you could just hear and everybody went away. So some of us had seen that happen over and over, but nowhere near with that volume. So we created Every Second Matters as an attempt, just out of frustration. Again, there's no rule book here. There's no, directions that we're following. We just knew what resources we had available to us. We knew that the amount of people that were involved, and we came up with this awareness campaign. We would start talking about the Second Amendment on the second day of each month, with the intent that we would just never forget what happened in 13, and that whenever needed, we would have lines of communication open. So if we created content for entertainment or informational or political, whatever the reason is, we were out there doing whatever our thing is. The one thing that kept us united was an interest in promoting the Second Amendment and being aware of that Second Amendment. And that project has been going on since 2013, so 5-6 years now. And somewhere along the line, Sean from Florida Carry suggested that we amplify the website part of it, which up until then had basically just been a presence on the internet, a URL that said, there's nothing to join. It's just an awareness campaign. So if you want to be part of it, talk about the Second Amendment on the second. There you go. There's nothing to it. And that was basically all the website was. One of the months, I'm a website guy, so I was playing around and I put all of the state's Second Amendments up there. So there was now, this like message, like there's nothing to join. Go participate in the Second Amendment. And then there was a list of the 50 Second Amendments. And there's like 9 states that don't have a Second Amendment, but most of them do. And we just put it in a list there. So, okay, so now we had a little bit more to the website. And then eventually I had a list, I'm a website guy, I had a list of all the organizations from someplace and I stuck that on there. So now we had this like just a plain old list, a web page with a bullet point list of all these organizations alphabetically, only arranged by national and then state level, alphabetically. The most boring basic list ever. So Sean from Florida Carry said at that point, why don't we do something? You're a website guy, do something. So I took some money, put it on a credit card, and I just put a little structure to it. So now it's a platform that allows people to join for free. You just have to have an email address. You join it, and now you can go to the organizations, and each of the organizations has a presence there, and you can be an advocate of that organization. So when we're talking about unifying the 2A organizations, what can we do? We saw that there was a situation where each organization has got its own reason to exist. And honestly, most of the organizations exist because there was gaps or weaknesses in other organizations. They saw that gap or that weakness. They saw that they had resources that could fill it. So instead of trying to create a giant organization, separate organizations exist. Because we're not all Borg, we don't all love each other, we're not hippies. People don't like each other sometimes, and that's fine, right? Some people just don't like each other. People don't like same sports teams. Some people like 9mm. I don't know. People are weird. So there's other organizations, right? So these organizations, I don't know if they're ever going to get together, and I don't know if they should, but somewhere along the line as a web guy and being interested in Second Amendment stuff, and honestly having attempted multiple times to get the organizations to work on some kind of a consistent or consistent platform. Let's all use this. Let's all use that and communicate with each other. It's just difficult. They won't do it. They don't have time for it. It's not in their routine. It's not, they don't have extra people on board to take on that task. And honestly, why should they, right? It's not necessarily, at least it's not a proven thing that's necessary. So to ask them to do something is unreasonable. So when we look at Every Second Matters, the project, it's designed to allow us, the individuals who see a need for unification of those organizations and have the time and the effort, the ability, the skills, more importantly, the time to put towards this, and to use the Every Second Matters website as a tool to accomplish this, to unify those organizations in spite of them not wanting to be unified. So in other words, if you're in Michigan and you like constitutional carry, and those are the things that you advocate and you follow those organizations, you can follow those organizations and be an advocate of them on the Every Second Matters platform, and let's say repost something that they post on Instagram, repost it on Every Second Matters. Okay, they put out a newsletter, you repost it on Every Second Matters. Whenever it's appropriate to amplify or enhance their message, you're an advocate of this organization, you amplify their message over on Every Second Matters. What that does is it allows us to spend a resource that we all have, time, to put archive of all the different Second Amendment stuff in one place, one website. There's a couple of things that accomplishes. One, we all get empowered. We all have something we can actually do. That it's something that we're doing isn't just going to the stream or the feed on some platform that hates us. It's going to a platform that's 100% to archive this so that it exists forever and becomes a list, an archive, a library of all his data. It creates a place like a Wikipedia of 2A where people can go get valid info, not just valid info, but actually discussion and some nuance to the different things, debates like this one or talks like this one. So that's what we can do, and it's free. Just go over there and do it, participate in it. I'm not getting paid to do it, and I'm not suggesting it's going to save anything, but that's something that we have done now. It's for maybe 3 or 4 years old like that. That is an effort to unify these organizations and give us something that we can do today.
Yeah, and if you guys haven't tried to do anything on Every Second Matters, and it could be something as simple as what a lot of people do to do it is open carry on the 2nd of each month. And if someone says, well, that doesn't do anything, it does quite a bit, actually. Open carrying a gun does so many different things. One, it shows that we can have a gun and still be safe, but more importantly, it could start a conversation. And I tell people all the time when I on Every Second Matters, I always carry my Glock because I have an outside the waist holster. It's a Marine Corps holster, and it's so funny to me that I live in a very pro-gun state, but still, I'll be walking through the grocery store and people won't recognize that the gun's in there. They want to talk about my holster, but what that does is it breaks down that barrier a little bit to have a discussion. There are so many different things you can do to support the Second Amendment. It doesn't necessarily mean that you have to support the 2A organizations. It doesn't mean you have to go on and start your YouTube channel or start a podcast or start an Instagram page. It could simply be talking to someone in your neighborhood about guns. And if we can get 5 million, 10 million people to do just that, is to have a civil, quiet, honest conversation about guns and not try to yell at people and try to tell them why they're wrong and not listening to why they say that we're wrong. If we can have a civil conversation, and like we've said before, and I think Clover said it many, many times, we're not here to change their minds overnight. We're here to plant the seed. Make them leave that conversation and say, that could be as big as anything. Yuta, you got anything you want to add real quick before we start kind of closing up shop?
No, I mean, I pretty much, everyone covered all the topics, so I kind of agree with everyone.
Well, we're going to start kind of sweeping the floor then, and you don't have to go home, but you got to get the hell out of here. Let's start with you then. Where can people find you? What projects do you have right now? Plug away. I know that you've got a couple books out there, but plug away. Tell people what you want them to know about you.
So I'm an author. I've written 3 books on firearms education for children. I have a 4th book coming out. When is it? Probably, hopefully June. And I have the Pew Pew Jew up on my, I would say probably the best Second Amendment T-shirts online.
They're pretty damn good. Not gonna lie.
Not unlike Grunt Style and Ranger Up, whose stuff I love, but their stuff is very patriotic. My shirts are all 2A and pretty damn funny, if I say so myself. But people can find me at thepewpewjew.com and on Instagram and Twitter at thepewpewjew.
Yeah, if you guys haven't checked him out, the books he's got, there's one that's the ABCs of Guns. You got with the 10 little, was it the 10 little liberals? Is that what it's called? Yeah. And then obviously Safety Ons. And you're talking about, that's not only a book, but I think, if I'm not mistaken, it's a coloring book as well, correct?
Yes, I took the book Safety On. There's nothing like my book on the market. I converted it to a coloring book so that after you read the book to your child or your child reads it, they're able to move over to the coloring book and actually immerse themselves into all aspects of gun safety and visualize it themselves, which in turn, will make it last in their mind and make a bigger impression.
Awesome. And thanks for coming on, bro. I really appreciate it. We'll see you. I'm assuming we'll see you in Indy, right?
No, it's actually on a Jewish holiday.
Oh, really? So you won't be there.
Yeah, another reason to hate the NRA, right?
Right.
No, I'm kidding. Yeah, I mean, it's unfortunate that they didn't arrange the NRA show around my schedule, but yeah, unfortunately, I will not be there. It's a very good possibility I'll actually be at the USCCA Expo.
Okay, cool.
I've been asked to speak there. I'm just trying to work out, arrangements. But if not there, then the next place people can see me, and I mean, for people who are in the media, I highly suggest this. The Gun Rights Policy Conference, the Second Amendment Foundation's huge get together for 2A activists. It's probably the most important gun get together every year, and it's in Phoenix this year. So I will be there.
If you have not been to the Gun Rights Policy Conference, which I have not, I will be there this year for the first time. AmCon's on Friday. Is that correct, G? And Utah,
Yeah.
They're both on a Friday. Are you going to be speaking at that one?
I am speaking at AmCon. My second time speaking. I just spoke this past year on self-promotion.
Mm-hmm.
I will be speaking again, elaborating on self-promotion at AmCon. And I have been speaking the last 2 years at the GRPC. Usually their invites don't go out until to speak there until a month or two before. So I won't know if I'm actually speaking at GRPC, but I will be at AmCon speaking.
Fantastic. Real quick before we move on, Rick out there sends a $5 super chat, says just a second to drop by. Keep up the good work. You rock, Ghost. I appreciate you, Rick. Thank you so much. Appreciate you. I want to I don't know if I should touch on this or not, but good Lord. I'm not even going to touch on it. You guys you're going to have to fight your own battles. I'm not even going to get into what's going on in the chat right now. So anyways, G, thanks for coming on, bro. Plug away. I know you got a couple of projects you got working on, and tell people where they can find you and all of that good stuff.
Oh, online, So thanks for having the chat, and I think it's a good topic, and hopefully, like you say, people will take it and run with it. And yeah, thanks for having it.
All right, well, guys, go check out Daily Gun Show. It's on YouTube, on GunChannels every night at midnight Eastern. And G hosts a show every night, weeknight, Monday through Friday. So don't go there Saturday and Sunday trying to find it, but weeknights, midnight Eastern, Daily Gun Show. Every second matters. He also does a 2A workshop every Tuesday and Sunday. Is it Tuesday and Sunday or Tuesday and Saturday?
Tuesday and Saturday. So
Saturday, okay.
I don't know if you saw my side thing there, but when Ghost ends it here, we'll stay on. We'll be live. We will still be in this room, so we usually stick around and BS.
Yeah, you don't have to jump out, if you don't want to. Right when I hit clear, we stick around and talk afterwards if you want to. So
yeah, and I'd like to bug you about something off air, but yeah, we just tagged a chat about a new project that we're going to be doing, and we'll be chatting more about that as we go. But it's Tuesdays and Saturdays. Yeah, we have a workshop. Really, it kind of goes in with what you guys were talking about with the AmCon. Whenever I started going to that AmCon, I thought, hey, great, this is perfect. We need this, right? It's 2A media. We're solid, and we're doing better working together. We've got lots of successes under our belts and working together and collaborating. Sky's the limit. And after the second one, I had some concerns that why are we doing this only twice a year? And I think both Yuta and I both had brought that to Cheryl and others. So hopefully we'll see more collaborations in this format, a live format, either live or off air, to collaborate with all the 2A media who are, you must be this high to enter with 2A, intent or whatever. But for people that are truly interested in 2A movement, then yeah, imagine what'll happen when we all start collaborating. And the AmCon was the beginning of all that, figuring out, hey, we can all get together, and it doesn't have to be on a platform like a Facebook or a YouTube where infrastructure dominates it, and with a flip of a switch they could eliminate everything, not only that we're using to get to work together, but everything that we've created. There's no potential to archive anything. So anyway, yeah, so I think the 2A workshops are an offset of that frustration, and hopefully we'll see something develop with that that's kind of semi-official to get everybody working together who's participating in the NAMCon.
Yeah. Glock Shooter out there says that he's talking with Clover or something about fighting for NRA. He's fighting against, so we do disagree. And see, that's I'm not going to tell you how to do anything. I'm not going to tell you how to do what I do. I'm just saying that, but in my opinion, the fact that we're having arguments over supporting an organization is counterproductive. If you don't want to support an organization, then don't support it. If you want to support an organization, support it. But arguing within our own ranks because someone supports an organization versus another one, that's just, that doesn't make any sense to me. And I guess that's where I'm kind of trying to come with this is, eventually we all have to understand that even though we might look different, we might sound different, we might support different causes or different organizations, ultimately, surely we can agree that we're all pro-gun, right? Surely we can agree that our bigger cause is worth more than the small fights. It's be pro-gun. It doesn't matter if you support the GOA, SAF, FPC, NRA, great. If you support all of them, great. If you support none of them, great. It's up to you. But surely we can all agree that we're pro-gun, right? If we're not pro-gun, then what the hell are you doing here? So that's my 2 cents. I'm tired of the bickering is basically what I'm saying. I'm just tired of it. Clover, what you got, bud?
Well, a couple things is, first of all, I've got Yehuda is the guest this week on Farm Friday. So
what are the odds of that?
All his stuff worked out really good. That's why I plotted him on Instagram. I'm like, you need to be here, bro. Like, that's a really good PR move for me. So yeah.
Talking about self-promotion, I think he must have listened to your speech last year.
Nailed it, man. Nailed it. So yeah, we had a great conversation. It's been available on Contributors and Patreon for those that support us over there. So some people out there may have already heard it. But yeah, we had a great conversation for sure. And yeah, outside of that, I just want to end on a positive note as far as from me, because we focus on this. I talked about it. We've got to get more positive. We focus on this negativity and everything else. South Dakota got constitutional carry. Looks
right
like
on.
Oklahoma is fixing to have constitutional carry.
So is Arkansas.
It looks like Arkansas and Kentucky, it looks like it's fixing to have concealed carry without a license.
That's
so
right.
Embrace those wins, everybody. Look for the positives. Embrace those wins because it can help bolster our attitude on things sometimes.
Fantastic.
But most of those wins came around from people getting in chats and moping because it'll never happen in this state, right?
Yeah, they did. That's exactly. Yeah, I think that.
And most of the people that do that shoot 9mm. Just saying.
Right. Probably a bunch of 9mm.
Bunch of 9mm lovers,
Yeah, I'm sure. But yeah, we do get wins, and I think it's really important that when we talk about those wins, we recognize those wins, and we focus on positive, because morale is a big thing.
Yeah.
And I see a very huge lack of morale out there, and that's why I try to keep things positive and talk in the positive and stay positive and present solutions and options. And my way may not be the only way. It may not be the best way, but talking about that and putting that stuff out there is a positive move. We can gloom and doom all day and kind of fall back into our shelters and all that good stuff. At the end of the day, that doesn't push a narrative forward. So we've got to get positive and stay positive.
And I'll say this about Glock Shooter out there. Okay, Glock's out there saying that he's obviously anti-NRA right now and all of that. And like I said, I'm not supporting the NRA. I've been Tim has helped me understand some things that I did not know about the NRA and some of that stuff, which I'm not saying that I will become an NRA member again. I will say that I understand more, and that's a lot of it, is understanding certain things that I wasn't privy to. So thank you for Tim for that. But as far as Glock goes, and I'm not telling you not to have your conversation about being anti-NRA, because like I said, the biggest thing we can do is have more conversations. But I ask everybody, and this is, Glock, you can take this however you want. I'm not going to tell you how to run your channel, your show, but let's try to be open to alternate thinking. let's try to understand that just because I don't feel a certain way about organization A, that I can't compromise or at least, understand why someone else would like organization A or B or Z or Y or whatever. I think that having a discussion is important, but I think that having the right discussion is more important. And I'm not saying the words, but how you have that conversation in a tactful, calm way with facts and being understanding and being empathetic to the other side. Empathy is a big thing. If you have compassion and empathy for your quote unquote enemy or whatever you want to call them, then maybe they'll have empathy in that for you. So let's try to have more discussions, but let's try to have the right discussion. I want to say thank you to everyone that's still watching. We still got 30 people out there. And I hate to turn it off. It's been an hour and 45 minutes. And I had no idea it'd been that long. Hit or Miss is still out there. Go check them out. Go listen to Night Strike and the boys yell at the moon for a little bit. And how you interpret shall not be infringed is different for everybody, buddy. It's different for everybody. And we can have this discussion if you like. I'd love to talk to you about it. But anyways, guys, go check out everyone's on the panel. Please go check out all their stuff. It's awesome. Go check out Daily Gun Show tonight at midnight Eastern. And I think that Sandhill Shooter's going to be having his chat tonight, 2/8 Tuesday. Go check him out. It's a great show as well. So thank you to everybody that's been here. If you're watching in replay or listening over on iTunes or iHeartRadio or Spotify or wherever, thank you so much for listening. Please leave comments down below. I try to answer comments within a couple hours, sometimes minutes if I'm on the computer. I will always try to answer every comment, whether it's positive or negative. If you have feedback, please let me know. We can't get better unless you say something. Well, on YouTube, GunStreamer, wherever it is, could be on Instagram or Facebook or even on podcasts. Please leave comments. We thank you for the thumbs up. We also appreciate your thumbs down. That lets me know that you didn't like what you have to hear. That's okay. We can all disagree at times. But thank you so much for watching and or listening. We shall see you next week. Semper Fidelis.